Hey guys, Carol here with the Lighthouse at Grace. I want to talk to you today about stranger danger. So I paused there for a second to give you a second to form this image in your mind of stranger danger. We know this campaign that's been around for over 60 years, since the 1960s. It's ingrained in all of our minds, right? So did you think of this guy right here? The white van that someone's going to kidnap, snatch my child or grandchild and throw him or her into a white van and drive away. We think of the creepy person that follows us around in the grocery store, which I've had several people tell me that they've had that happen to them. Maybe the creepy guy in the trench coat hanging out by the kids' playground or the park. All of those images are what we think of when we hear that term stranger danger. So that tells me that this campaign that's over 60 years old was very successful. And if any of you are maybe moms, grandmas, dads, grandpas watching this right now, you went through school in the 1970s, the 80s, the 90s, early 2000s, and even to today, to 2026. This campaign seems to be alive and well in 2026, and I will say that it's kind of been my nemesis for all this time of doing child safety awareness training and education. And a nemesis is this like formidable, long-standing opponent or enemy that just can't be defeated. And that's how I feel about stranger danger. So I'm sure when I said that in the beginning that I want to talk about stranger danger, you kind of got a different idea of what I was going to be talking about. But I want to say that in order for us to keep our children safe, that's my goal. That's why I'm doing this video. That's why I've been educating for the last 5 or 6 years, because this is near and dear to my heart. I want children to be safe. I want them to be safe from sexual predators. So we need to be looking at things accurately, don't we? And so if we are just primarily focused on stranger danger and teaching our kids, watch out for strangers, because this has been ingrained in our minds for so long, we're really going to miss some important things. So my goal today and my plea with you is that we can maybe think about things a little bit different and change the conversations maybe that need to be changed. So that's my goal. We're all on the same page. We want to keep our children safe. So as we get into this, let's just look at the statistics. So the majority, and if you look at, there's different resources you can look at online. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is a great one. Your local Children's Advocacy Center. There's a one called Darkness to Light, and it's a lot of just education about childhood sexual abuse. It's a great one. So there are numerous resources out there that will say, everyone that I've seen, they all say the same thing. The majority of children that have been sexually abused or exploited, that abuse and exploitation is done by someone the child knows. And the statistics are high. It's 90, I've seen some that say 90 to 95% of abuse and exploitation committed against children is done by someone they know, not a stranger. So see why stranger danger has been my nemesis? Everyone's focused on that, but the statistics say otherwise, that we need to be looking out for people in our child's circle that the child knows and that we know. That's who we need to be looking out for. So a very, very small percentage, something like 7 to 10%, less than 10%, some resources say, is actually committed, the sexual abuse or exploitation is committed by an actual stranger, someone the child doesn't know, someone that is going to kidnap your child and take them and sexually abuse them. It's just very, very rare that happens. So let's look at how it does happen. Let's talk about the actual danger done by, we should change it to people we know danger rather than stranger danger. So 50% of this childhood sexual abuse is done by someone in the child circle. So that would be a teacher, a coach, a youth pastor, a camp counselor, a music teacher, someone that's in the child circle that that works with children. So that's 50%. And then we've got another 30 to 40% is done by family members. And so that is how it's happening. The other thing with the 50% by someone the child knows, it's in their circle, is siblings of friends. So older siblings of the child's friend is another group that we need to have on our radar. So the statistics say that very, very rarely does this happen by this guy that's in the white van prowling around the Walmart parking lot looking for children. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying we shouldn't worry about strangers. We don't have anything to worry about with strangers. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. I'm just saying we need to change our mindset just a little bit to where the danger actually is, and that is circles of people, or people that we know in our circles. And this is done by, and we'll have more education on this later, and you can look it up yourself, is done by through grooming. The children are being groomed, and that's a process of deception and manipulation where a predator grooms the child to the point of sexually abusing them or exploiting them. So it looks different than the guy in the white van. Not saying we don't need to look out for white vans. We absolutely do. But let's look at exploitation. And so when we look at exploitation and human trafficking is just a severe form of child sexual abuse. And so it is a person, a trafficker, basically provides access to a child, to a third party, for the purpose of that third party sexually assaulting the child. So I've also heard it called rape for profit. And so that is when a child or teen is sold for sex in exchange for something of value, which is usually money. So it's considered a severe form of child sexual abuse. So it's all, in the same bucket. It's people out there, sexual predators that want access to our children. So when we have in-person Lighthouse events, when I train in the classroom with young people, I always ask the same question. What do you think human trafficking is? Guess what gets brought up most of the time by both adults and teenagers? This guy right here. Everybody's really focused on the white van. They're focused on people they don't know, the strangers. So they'll usually say something like, oh, it's when, a kid is snatched or kidnapped and they're sold to someone in another country. I've heard, oh, it's, it happens at the border when people come across the border. Those are typically what I hear. Well, once again, let's look at how it really happens. So the top number one way that a child or teenager, when I say child, I mean a minor, someone under the age of 18, when someone's lured into trafficking, the most prevalent way that happens is through what's called the boyfriend method, or it's sometimes called the romantic method, the Romeo method. And this guy comes into play quite a bit in those cases. And just think about a stranger. When it comes to, the sexual abuse and the exploitation, the trafficking, a stranger becomes someone familiar. Because think about, even your child's teacher was once a stranger to them, right? There was a point where they were meeting that teacher or that youth pastor for the first time. So in the case of human trafficking, absolutely, it's someone who befriends and becomes a friend of your child. Then eventually, that turns into a romantic relationship. That's the grooming process. It's rarely done by, oh, I'm going to kidnap you and take you away in the white van. That's rarely how it happens. So primarily it's happening through the boyfriend method, pretending to be romantically interested. It's happened a lot here on the cell phone, on social media apps, gaming apps. The other ways that it's happening is through job offers. So a promise of like a modeling contract or a music contract. It's also happening through family members and peers. So friends of teens at school. So it's happening with peers. But rarely does it happen from a complete stranger. So kidnapping, snatching, true stranger danger when it comes to human trafficking, that's the least prevalent way that it happens. So just wanted to throw that out there when we're, uber focused on stranger danger. Want y'all to also think about when you use that term with your children, stranger danger. Once again, we need to have these conversations, but think about even that terminology. What does a child think of when you're warning them about these strangers that are going to, harm them? They're going to have this mental image of someone creepy, like this monster. They're going to, because you know how children are, they're going to think it's just going to be this weird looking person or creepy person. I mean, we do that as adults too. But these predators, they look like regular people. They actually are. I mean, they are regular people in the fact that they're, living out in society, working jobs, going to church, being at your child's school. So they are just members of society, I guess, is how I want to coin them. Many of them don't look creepy. Some of them are actually handsome, pretty. You wouldn't expect people to be sexual predators that are. They don't fit what you think would be in your mind. And so we need to train our kids about that. It could be not necessarily someone that looks creepy. So just to, like I said, change the language a little bit. Maybe if we changed stranger danger to tricky people, maybe, or come up with, a phrase that we could talk with our kids about. It's a tricky person, or let's talk about safe versus unsafe actions that they can expect from adults. What does a safe adult look like? What does a safe action look like? And so the top 4, and I'm going to go into more depth on this in a future video, but our hallmark number 1 rule when it comes to safe adults: no one-on-one adult-child contact. An adult should never be alone with a child one-on-one. Never, never, never. That should never happen. The other one is an adult should never ask a child to keep a secret. And so in your family, that should be played out. You know what? We don't keep secrets here, not even small secrets, not even tiny secrets. So no secrets. The other one is that an adult should never ask a child for help. Why does an adult need to ask a child for help? They don't. And so let's train our children. You know what? An adult should never be asking you to help them with something. That's an adult job, not a child's job. And then the last one is body boundaries. And so sexual predators are banking on, that usually they are targeting, the vulnerable child, someone that maybe they're in a single parent home. They've got problems, they've got issues. We all have issues. All children and teenagers have issues, right? But some of them have, deeper issues than others. Maybe a foster child, or they have unstable housing, or they've got a parent in prison that's incarcerated, or, the parent is addicted to drugs or alcohol. So different levels of vulnerability. That's absolutely where the sexual predator is going to strike. And they're going to bank on the child not telling them no. So when it comes to body boundaries, once again, the grooming process, they're not going to go into the sexual abuse just, 0 to 100. They're going to groom the child. It's going to be a gradual process. So that's when we train our children that, even a touch that feels uncomfortable, if it's a tickle or a hug, anything like that, if you feel uncomfortable, you're allowed to say, you know what, that makes me feel uncomfortable. So these are things we can be doing with our children, talking about these things. And we've got loads of videos that we've posted on the Lighthouse to help your child, watch these videos. And I'm talking about children, kindergarten and up, to have these conversations and maybe come up with some scenarios. Hey, if this happens, how are you going to respond? Like, talk to your kids about some good ways that they can respond, and the power of no. And that when they're in these situations, they have the power of no, that you have empowered them and equipped them to say no in these situations. So that is just huge for a child to be given that permission and that training ahead of time. So we're going to have more to come, but if you'll go back and, like I said, look at what's already been posted, we'll be posting more to keep your children safe, keep our children safe. And so just stay tuned to the Lighthouse. Thank you so much for watching this video. Y'all have a blessed day.